Thank you, Melissa. Looking back over 45 years, both as an administrator and a coach of debate and forensics, I have come to realize that my students have taught me a lot more than I have taught them. For those of you who do not know where Mars Hill is located, it's a small K-12 school that is nestled in the Tennessee Valley in northwest Alabama. Now, as the president and headmaster of the school, I often had the opportunity to eat lunch with our kindergarten students. And each day, a member of the class was selected to hold the door for their teacher and for their fellow students as they entered the cafeteria. And they also taught them to hold it open for any adults who might be there as well. And happenstance placed me in the line one day as a sweet young lady was holding the door, and she looked at me rather puzzled, and I walked through the door, and then she said, "You're not at all like my mommy said." I remind you that I learned from my students. So, in a lapse of judgment, I said, "Really, what does your mommy say?" She didn't skip a beat. She said, "Mommy says you're as big as a barn, but you came in that door just like we did." Fast forward 3 years, I'm back in the cafeteria. Like all good debate coaches, I have learned from previous mistakes. A young boy sat some 3 or 4 seats down, and he was staring at me. I sensed trouble. So I decided the best part of valor would be to sneak out as quickly as possible. But kindergartners are fast, and before I could make a move, he said, "Jimmy says you're a fake." Remember, I have learned my lesson, so I ignored the kindergartner. You do not ignore kindergarten. You see, he assumed that I had not heard, so he repeated it, this time much more loudly, so I have the cafeteria heard. "Jimmy says you're fake. He says you smile all the time." I thought, well, that's rather innocuous, and so I said to him, "I'm sorry Jimmy thinks that, but yes, I do smile a lot because I'm a happy person." He said, "That's exactly what Jimmy said. He said anybody that's fat, bald, and ugly can't be happy like that." I can imagine if kindergartners say things like that, what some debaters might say after a judge. Seriously. And to Melissa and Michael and Susan and Bill and the Barclay Forum Foundation, thank you. I am honored and humbled to be here this afternoon. And I recognize that I stand in the shadow of greatness. Dr. Lafayette, I salute you. I know I'm standing in your shadow of greatness this afternoon. To the others who are here who have been honored, I stand in the shadow of greatness. I stand in the shadow of greatness of the legends in our community who have made such a tremendous impact through the years. I think about Glenn Pelham and Phyllis Barton and Sandra Silvers and Lanny Neglin and Billy Tate. All of them deeply enriched our community. They were trailblazers and they were dreamers. And they charted the course for where we are today. They made forensics what it is in 2014. And we owe them and others like them a great debt. Before moving on, please let me take just a moment to pay a special tribute to William Woods Tate, to Billy. Most of you remember him as a rather substantial Southern gentleman who could pick places that served good barbecue. And he was that, but he was much, much more. He was a dear friend. He and I began coaching the same year in the state of Alabama. He was at A.G. Parrish High School in Selma, and I was at Mars Hill. In over 4 years of friendly competition at A.G. Parrish and Selma and Montgomery Bell, never once did I find reason to question his integrity. He jokingly referred to my novices as bar fights, And those of us at Mars Hill jokingly referred to the MBA novices as tater tots. Billy lived for forensics. He lived for NFL. He was a leader. He was an innovator, par excellence. He was, as dramatist Robert Bolt said about Thomas More, a man for all seasons. And no one in our community cared for his or her students more than did Billy Tate. Rest in peace, Billy. Your legacy lives on. One of America's great poets concluded his poem, The Lesson for Today, with 4 provocative lines. And were an epitaph to be my story, I'd have a short one ready for my own. I would have written for me on my stone, I had a lover's quarrel with the world. The hope of our world lies in the people Robert Frost described. His words epitomize Emory University and the Barclay Forum. They speak to Glenn Pelham's dream for our forensics community. They personify the magnificent, untiring manner in which Melissa and the Barclay Forum Foundation has transformed Glenn's dream into reality by quarreling with our ideas. They contemplated forensics with affection, and yet at the same time, they weren't afraid to criticize it with understanding. Though they were disturbed by its inequities, they also recognized that there were great benefits to come for its participants. And today, you benefit from their foresight. And this afternoon, my goal for all of you, coaches and students who are here in this auditorium, is to understand how blessed you are to be a part of this community. In a day when people are still taught to hate and when the ability to see another's point of view is almost non-existent, Glenn and Melissa and the Barclay Forum understood the mystique of debate and forensics. And they knew how desperately the world needed the forensics community. And they passed along that passion to the coaches who are present here and who are seated here and throughout this auditorium this afternoon, to this exceptional cadre of individuals who sacrifice and give and who make a difference. And to the students who are in this auditorium this afternoon, take time when you get home and trace the history of forensics in your state and in your school. And when you do, you too will be able to realize that you are in the shadow of greatness. Through the decades, the forensics community has quarreled with the world that really champions narrow-mindedness. You know, today most people, even most people in academia, only pay lip service to academic freedom and freedom of speech. Like the capital of Gondor in Tolkien's immortal The Lord of the Rings, debate is that lasting fortress that alone, seemingly sometimes, is willing to resist the constant assault of bigotry and narrow-mindedness. Everyone in this room recognizes that most of modern society refuses to listen to opposing viewpoints. Only debate refuses to surrender. And it is this community that points its students toward objectivity. It is this community that demands its students examine all sides of an issue. This community has quarreled with those who would limit free debate and with those who would deny to others the right to be heard. No other community quarrels like this one does. I cherish a small volume in my library that was written by Judge Pelham. Among the opening comments are, "The strong probability is that opinions will be silenced unless the atmosphere is made just right for the person to feel licensed to speak. The environment of the moment must be so defined that there is freedom of expression." And only this community dares take those words to heart. In 1925, during the famous Scopes trial in Dayton, Tennessee, famous lawyer Clarence Darrow defended the right to academic freedom by telling the court, "It is bigotry to teach only one theory of origins." This community applauds the principle of fairness and open examination of ideas. It's this community that understands that silencing dissent is not golden, it's devastating. Every debater here this weekend understands that. Those of you who coach taught them that. Every debater here this weekend understands optimal solutions come after hearing and researching both sides of an argument. They understand because those of you who coach taught them that. Every debater here this weekend recognizes true academic freedom doesn't muzzle opponents, it empowers them. They know true academic freedom evaluates and discusses and persuades. And the reason they know that is because those of you who are coaches taught them. Only